Welcome to the Gym Rad review of the Century Creed line of MMA Pro training gear. I am a striking coach at Bobby Lashley's American Top Team here in Aurora, Colorado. I asked Bobby Lashley to see if he could get me some of the Century Creed line so I could test it out for my students and for the gym overall. Of course, like most martial artists, I was familiar with Century, but more from a traditional martial arts standpoint. They weren't really known for Muay Thai or boxing or MMA type sparring gear. It was more Taekwondo, karate-based products that I was aware of. So first, let's talk about some of the sparring gear, the shin guards and the headgear. Here we are at the gym doing some light sparring here with some of my students and some of the teammates and fighters. I'm wearing the Century Creed shin guards and the headgear. Those gloves I'm wearing are not Century gloves. I did not get a pair of gloves to test out. The headgear it's comfortable. You know, I can take some pretty hard strikes, but it does move around a lot more than I prefer. The chin's a little loose, but overall it's not a bad headgear. It feels really light, so it doesn't weigh you down. It's pretty good when you grapple. The best part of this headgear is the range of vision. It's got a great range of vision. Better than some of the Hayabusa headgears that I've worn before. But right here you'll see where I engage in a clinch and then I have to like fix the headgear. So it moves around a little more than I'd like. But overall it's pretty good headgear. As far as the shin guards, I love them. If you look at some of my sparring partners and just some of the guys here on the mat, you'll see a lot of clunky shin guards, velcros, buckles, you know, big padding on the feet. They're just really hard to move around in and uncomfortable. I've used pretty much every brand and version of shin guard there is, and I am in love with the Century Creed line of shin guards. They are the slip-on version. They're thin. I don't even feel like I'm wearing them. They're built for MMA sparring, so they're meant for grappling, so they don't slide around when you're wearing them. I just can't say enough great things about them. Here you see, I was trying to sucker punch Bobby there. Here's some light sparring with Bobby Lashley. As you can tell, we're going pretty light. He's not even wearing a mouthpiece. But we've gotten some pretty hard sessions, and Bobby's really given the headgear the acid test, and it's pretty sturdy. But when it comes to the shin guards, if you see the ones Bobby's wearing, he was testing those out today. Those are really clunky, but you could just see the difference in his shin guards and mine. The Century line, if there's one thing that I feel is the best product they've put out, it's these shin guards. As thin as they look, they provide a lot of protection, and I spar pretty regularly with some very strong heavyweights, Bobby Lashley and Alex Huddlestone. I've taken some serious kicks, and these shin guards are just sturdy. I would recommend them to anyone who asks, and honestly, I don't see myself really switching to any other type of shin guard anytime soon. These are my favorite. So let's talk about some of the striking pads that Century offers through the Creed line. These are the long focus mitts. Obviously, as a striking coach, you do a lot of mitt work with your students, you know, at the gym, for clients as a trainer, with fighters when you corner them. So it's important you have a set of mitts that you really like. I had a set of pretty heavy-duty Sphairtex mitts that I used for a while, and I really enjoyed those. So when I first got these, I felt they were really light, and I didn't know if they'd be as sturdy. But amazingly enough, they're light, but they have significant padding. If you see here, I'm actually doing some pad work with one of my students, Mitch. I try not to give him too much of a hard time about wearing socks on the mat. It was about 5 degrees that day, and it felt like we were striking on ice. As you can tell, the long focus mitt is very useful in every aspect. Without having to switch to actual Thai pads, we can mix in kicks with our punch combos. Because of that, it makes it easy when I have to travel and corner some of the fighters. I can just pick this pair of mitts instead of having a duffel with focus mitts and Thai pads and all types of other gear. So here are some Thai pads now that we use at the gym from time to time, and they're not great. And you know, I've used almost every version of a Thai pad, all these different brands, and I've pretty much come to understand exactly what I like and prefer in a decent striking Thai pad. As I said, you know, we work with some heavyweights, so we have some pretty hard kickers in the gym, and you know, need a really good pad for that kind of training. This brings us to the Creed line of Thai pad with the elbow shield. These Century Thai pads are as near as perfect as I've ever used. I love these pads. They're very light, but they're very sturdy. They really absorb impact very well. One of the best features on these pads is the elbow pad at the bottom of the pad. If you look closely, you'll see there's a little padding right there where the elbow is. If you've ever thrown a kick and caught someone's elbow when kicking Thai pads, you'll understand how much of a benefit these elbow pads really are. So nearly perfect isn't exactly perfect, so I'll explain the two things that I don't particularly like about the pads. One is the grip. The handle grip at the top of the pads is really small. I'm a pretty big guy, but even as a regular person, I don't see how they can comfortably grip those handles. They don't have a lot of finger space, so that's a little uncomfortable. And they're great pads, but the price tag to me is really high. But if you've got the scratch and you're willing to pay top dollar for some pads, I would recommend these. Overall, the Creed line itself is a pretty strong line of products, MMA, striking or otherwise. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.